"Get out of the vehicle now," the officer screamed, his gun pointed directly at Samir's chest. The cold Vermont air seemed to freeze as the Malik family sat paralyzed with fear. Samir kept his hands on the steering wheel, his voice calm yet firm. "Officer, please lower your weapon. My family is in the car. Did I ask you to talk?" "Step out of the car," the officer yelled again, his finger dangerously close to the trigger. Laila clutched Zara's hand tightly, whispering a prayer under her breath. Omar, sitting behind his father, pulled out his phone and began recording the encounter. "This isn't right," he muttered softly. The officer's partner circled the car like a predator, tapping on the back window with his flashlight. "What's in the trunk?" he barked. "Nothing illegal," Samir replied, still trying to de-escalate the situation. "We're just a family on a trip. Please, you don't need to do this." But the officer wasn't listening. With hostility in his eyes, he reached for the door handle. "Out. Now." Just hours earlier, the Malik family had been laughing and enjoying their road trip. They were traveling from Boston to Vermont, celebrating Zara's acceptance into MIT. The fall foliage framed their journey with vibrant reds and yellows, and everything felt perfect. "This is the start of something amazing, Zara," Laila said, smiling at her daughter. "Thanks, Mom," Zara replied, holding her acceptance letter. "I still can't believe it." Omar, ever the jokester, chimed in, "Yeah, don't get too full of yourself, genius. Remember who helped you with math last year?" Zara rolled her eyes, and the siblings burst into laughter. Samir glanced at them in the rearview mirror, feeling an immense sense of pride. They stopped at roadside diners, took photos of the scenery, and talked about the adventures they would have in Vermont. But as they approached a small, quiet town, the flashing red and blue lights appeared behind them, shattering the joy of their trip. The officer's flashlight glared into the car. "License and registration," he demanded. Samir handed them over, his voice steady. "May I ask why we were stopped?" The officer ignored the question, instead signaling to his partner. The second officer began circling the car, peering through the windows. "Where are you headed?" the officer asked. "We're on a trip to Vermont," Samir replied calmly. "Step out of the vehicle," the officer interrupted, his tone sharp. Layla's grip on Zara's hand tightened. "What's happening?" Zara whispered. Samir hesitated but complied, stepping out of the car. That's when things spiraled. As Samir stood outside, one officer rummaged through the car, pulling out bags, snacks, and Zara's acceptance letter. When he reached Samir's prayer rug, a cherished family heirloom, he carelessly tossed it onto the ground. "Hey!" Omar shouted, his phone still recording. "You can't do that." The officer outside turned, noticing Omar's phone. His face darkened as he reached into the car and snatched it. "You're not recording anything," he snarled, deleting the video before smashing the phone onto the pavement. Omar stared at the shattered pieces, his fists clenched. "Why are you doing this? We haven't done anything wrong." "Shut your mouth," the officer snapped before turning his attention back to Samir. Without warning, the officer grabbed Samir by the arm and yanked him toward the ground. "Hey! There's no need for this." Samir protested as his face pressed into the cold dirt. Zara and Laila screamed, and Omar tried to step out of the car, only to be shoved back inside by the other officer. "Stay where you are." Samir was roughly cuffed, his wrists aching from the tight grip of the metal. "You haven't even asked for my ID," he said through gritted teeth. The officer rifling through the car came over and began patting down Samir's pockets. When his hand brushed against a badge, he paused. He pulled it out, his eyes widening as he read. Department of Homeland Security. This can't be real," the officer stammered, showing it to his partner. "Check the ID," Samir said coldly. "And then you'll know exactly who I am." The officer holding the badge stared at it in disbelief before turning to the ID. The words, Samir Malik, Assistant Director, Department of Homeland Security, stared back at him. His face drained of color as he muttered, "Oh no." Samir, still cuffed and on the ground, fixed his gaze on the officer. "You've made a serious mistake." The second officer, who had been silent, walked over to inspect the badge. "Is this real?" he whispered. "It's real," Samir snapped. "And your actions tonight are going to have consequences." Realizing the gravity of the situation, the officer hesitated before unlocking the cuffs. Samir stood, rubbing his sore wrists, and looked both officers in the eye. "You pointed a gun at my family, smashed my son's phone, and humiliated us for no reason. Now, you're going to answer for it. Subscribe to my channel for more stories like this. Comment below where you're watching this story from. Let's stand together against injustice. Back in the car, Laila wiped tears from her face as Omar tried to collect the broken pieces of his phone. Zara remained silent, her face pale and stunned. They can't get away with this, Omar said, his voice trembling with anger. They destroyed my phone, but the video is backed up in the cloud. Samir nodded, his jaw clenched. Good. We'll use it. Once they were allowed to leave, the Maliks drove to the nearest motel. As the family sat together, Samir made a phone call to his office. I need this reported immediately, he said. I'll send over the video footage once we've retrieved it. Zara finally broke her silence. Why did they hate us so much, Dad? We didn't do anything wrong. Samir sighed deeply, looking at his children. Some people judge others based on fear and prejudice. But we're not going to let them win. The next morning, Omar uploaded the recovered video to social media, and it quickly spread. The footage showed everything: the gun pointed at Samir, the careless handling of the prayer rug, and the officer smashing Omar's phone. Within hours, the video was trending, with hashtags like #JusticeForTheMaliks and #EndRacialBias. News outlets picked up the story, and reporters began calling for interviews. Samir, though reluctant at first, agreed to speak out. This isn't just about my family, he told a local journalist. This is about a broken system that needs to be fixed. If this can happen to us, it can happen to anyone. The response was overwhelming. Messages of support poured in from across the country. Laila, inspired by the solidarity, began organizing a community forum in Vermont to address racial profiling and police misconduct. Meanwhile, the officers involved were suspended as an internal investigation was launched. Samir was asked to testify about the incident, and he didn't hold back. I was treated like a criminal for no reason, he told the investigators. And worse, my family was traumatized. The people responsible for this need to be held accountable. The officers, now facing public outrage, attempted to defend their actions, claiming they had acted out of suspicion. But the video evidence left no room for excuses. Samir's testimony and the viral video had brought national attention to the Malik family's ordeal. Civil rights organizations stepped in to support the family, offering legal counsel. The family decided to file a formal lawsuit against the officers and the town's police department for racial profiling, excessive use of force, and violation of their civil rights. This is not just about us, Laila said during a press conference. This is about ensuring that no other family goes through what we endured. The legal team was determined to hold the officers accountable. They cited the smashed phone, the deleted video, the lack of any legitimate reason for the stop, and the discovery of Samir's badge and ID as undeniable proof of wrongdoing. They had no right to search the vehicle or assault my client, the lead attorney declared. As the lawsuit progressed, more troubling details about the police department emerged. Other victims of racial profiling came forward, sharing their stories of being harassed and humiliated in the same town. The Malik's fight for justice was becoming a broader movement. Laila's community forum in Vermont became a turning point. People of all backgrounds, including local residents, attended to discuss their own experiences with racial prejudice. Many shared how they had remained silent out of fear, but seeing the Malik's courage inspired them to speak up. We have to hold those in power accountable, Laila told the crowd. Change begins with us. Meanwhile, Zara and Omar became active online, creating videos to educate others about racial profiling and systemic bias. Zara, using her platform as an MIT student, collaborated with activist groups to spread awareness, while Omar's sharp commentary and heartfelt posts resonated with younger audiences. Like and subscribe if you believe in equality and justice, Omar said in one of his videos. Let's make sure our voices are heard. As the trial approached, the officers' defense team attempted to paint a different picture of the events. They claimed the Malik's behavior had been suspicious and insisted they had acted within protocol. However, the video evidence, combined with eyewitness testimonies, painted a clear picture of misconduct. Samir's calm demeanor during the incident and the blatant disrespect shown to his prayer rug became focal points of the case. They weren't suspicious, Samir's lawyer argued in court. They were targeted because of their ethnicity and religion. The officers' inability to justify their actions weakened their case. Public opinion continued to shift against them, and protests outside the courthouse became a daily occurrence. Despite the legal battle's emotional toll, the Malik family found strength in their unity. Zara and Omar leaned on their parents for guidance, and Samir and Laila encouraged their children to channel their anger into something constructive. Omar launched a campaign encouraging others to share their stories of injustice, using the hashtag #WeDeserveBetter. Stories from across the country flooded in, creating a powerful wave of solidarity. The family also hosted a cultural night in Vermont, inviting locals to learn more about their heritage. "This is who we are," Laila said, her voice full of pride. "We refuse to let prejudice define us." The courtroom was packed as the trial neared its conclusion. The prosecution presented the final blow. A forensic expert retrieved fragments of Omar's deleted video from the cloud. The footage, though incomplete, showed the officer smashing Omar's phone and pointedly disregarding Samir's calm explanations. The jury watched intently as the expert testified about how the officers had violated multiple protocols, including their failure to request ID before resorting to violence. The video also highlighted the moment the officer threw Samir's prayer rug onto the roadside, drawing gasps from the audience. The defense attempted to argue that the officers were under high stress and acted out of concern for public safety, but the evidence was damning. When cross-examined, neither officer could justify why Samir was cuffed before his credentials were even checked. As the closing statements began, Samir's lawyer delivered a powerful message: this isn't just about one family. This is about ensuring that every American, regardless of race or religion, is treated with the dignity and respect they deserve. The verdict came after hours of deliberation. The officers were found guilty of misconduct, and the police department was held liable for systemic negligence. The family was awarded damages, but for the Maliks, the victory wasn't about money, it was about accountability. The courtroom erupted in applause when the verdict was read. Outside, supporters gathered, holding signs with slogans like, "Justice for the Maliks," and "End racial profiling now." Zara hugged her parents tightly, tears streaming down her face. "We did it, Baba," she whispered. During a press conference, Samir addressed the public. "This is a win, not just for my family, but for every family that has faced injustice. We are proud to have turned our pain into a movement for change." The Maliks returned to Vermont to take a breather after the intense trial. The small cabin they had rented earlier became a place of reflection. Sitting by the fire, Samir looked around at his family, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "This journey didn't break us," he said. "It made us stronger." Laila smiled, adding, "And it's just the beginning. There's so much more work to be done." Zara and Omar, inspired by their parents' resilience, began planning new initiatives to keep the conversation alive. Zara proposed organizing workshops at MIT, while Omar discussed building an app to document and report incidents of racial profiling. In the months that followed, the Malik family worked tirelessly to foster unity and understanding. Laila's forums grew in popularity, drawing people from diverse backgrounds who shared stories of hope and change. The family's cultural night became an annual event in Vermont, bringing together communities to celebrate diversity. Samir also became a prominent advocate for law enforcement reform, using his Homeland Security experience to suggest policies that could prevent similar incidents in the future. "We need better training, more accountability, and stronger laws to protect citizens," he said during a televised interview. Omar's social media presence exploded, with thousands of followers tuning into his videos. His posts weren't just about the incident anymore, they tackled broader issues of civil rights, equality, and empowerment. "Comment where you're watching from," he said in one video, smiling confidently. "Together, we can make a difference." He launched a podcast featuring interviews with activists, lawyers, and victims of injustice. "This is bigger than my family," Omar said in an episode. "This is about changing the system." At MIT, Zara led a student-led campaign to address systemic bias on college campuses. She collaborated with professors to develop workshops and led rallies to push for better policies within the academic system. She also partnered with Omar on several initiatives, blending her technical expertise with his creativity. "If we want change, we have to fight for it," Zara said during a rally. Her efforts earned her recognition within the university, and she was invited to speak at conferences, inspiring others with her family's story. Months later, the Maliks gathered once again at the Vermont cabin. This time, they were joined by friends and supporters who had become part of their journey. As the sun set over the mountains, Samir raised a glass. "Our road trip started with celebration, was derailed by prejudice, but ended in triumph," he said. "We took the wheel back and steered toward a better future." The family's story had become a symbol of hope and perseverance. "Like and subscribe if you believe in justice and equality," Omar said, recording the moment for his followers. "And never stop fighting for what's right." Their journey wasn't just about their family, it was a call to action for everyone watching. What will you do to drive change in your community? Comment below and let us know.